Welcome to Swoop Podcast, and here are your hosts, Dante Fantuzzi and Josh Sanchez.
For the night, Dante Fantuzzi, and I'm here with my partner,
Josh Sanchez.
and it has been a nice week of sports. Basketball has just become its own hot topic, his own saga. Its own drama and saga and everything else like that. And it has
interesting stuff.
a lot of interesting stuff that's happened over the weekend. So for this podcast, we're going to keep it strictly basketball, nothing else. Strictly basketball for today's podcast. And we promise for our next show, we're going to include other topics. But the most interesting thing that has happened over the weekend, pretty sure everybody's heard about it, Carmelo Anthony being traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Josh, how do you feel about this Thunder team going forward? And do you also think they're legit contenders and a legit team to beat the Warriors in the West?
I think in the beginning of the year, it's going to take them some time to win, just like how it takes every super team. But I believe that they are legit contenders, and here's why. You have a star in Russell Westbrook. Superstar. You have another superstar in Paul George.
Thank you for specifying that.
Paul George needed a change. Indiana just didn't have enough around him, and you're going to see Paul George elevate his game now that he has Russell Westbrook with him. And now you get Melo, and people criticize Melo's defense, but you also got to remember, the Thunder have Andre Roberson, and they have a Steven Adams paint protector in the paint. So now you got Russell Westbrook, that is a pretty decent defender. He can hold his own. Paul George is an elite defender. That backcourt is going to be crazy with Westbrook and Paul George. And then you have Roberson as the 3. He can play D. He's your 3-and-D type guy, even though his three-pointer's okay. And then you got Melo, who is an offensive stud. And you don't really need to worry about his defense because you have 4 pretty good and elite defenders all on one thing. They're starting 5. Honestly, maybe one of the best in NBA. And it actually sounds a lot. It sounds like Golden State Warriors territory to me. And they do take a hit, though, with their bench. But they still have Patrick Patterson. They still have, I got to think of the roster off the top of my head. They have Grant. They got rid of McDermott, and they also got rid of
Canner.
So they lost some key bench players, but in my opinion, I believe that they are legit contenders. Mm-hmm. Once they find out how to play well with each other, I also like the storyline too. You take 3 guys that have been criticized for their lack of play when it matters most and stuff like that. Russell Westbrook being criticized, how they have no rings yet and they're so talented. So I think those 3 coming together, Melo definitely needed a change. New York was just giving him no love in New York. Phil Jackson, my fault, not New York, but Phil Jackson. And I was listening to First Take earlier today, and they were saying how Stephen A. and Max were saying how Carmelo Anthony, his trade value went down,
decreased
because of Phil Jackson. So again, Phil Jackson makes another mistake for New York Knicks fans. So Phil gotta go. Yeah, you gotta go. It's getting annoying. But yeah, I think Oklahoma City is a legit contender. I think they will be the 2 seed or 1 seed, depending on how Golden State goes, barring injury. And I can't wait for this NBA season. We have ourselves, the Western Conference is very tough. Now the East, it's not. I mean, it's tough, but you see the West, in those top 3, you have the Warriors and their dominance. Now you have Oklahoma City Thunder, who Durant came at on Twitter the other day, and he apologized for it. And then now you have the San Antonio Spurs. They're like the New England Patriots in basketball, always winning 50-plus games. And then you have the Rockets. We'll talk about the Rockets. That'll be our next topic, but I want to hear your opinions on the trade.
I mean, this trade was a blockbuster trade. Besides this Kyrie thing that's going down, this trade has been a blockbuster trade. A lot of people, like myself, really didn't see the Thunder playing a part into this trade. I honestly thought it was going to either become the Rockets or the Cavaliers type thing. But look, this trade has its positive and its negatives, like everything else. The positive thing I see coming out of this trade is that Melo to the Thunder, it's a great thing. He's in a better position now to win a championship. And now he's playing with my favorite player, Paul George, PG-13. Paul George, my favorite player. NBA MVP, Russell Westbrook. PG, Russ, like you said, they make one of the best backcourts in the NBA if they do decide to put PG as their shooting guard.
Which I think they will. It'll make perfect sense to put PG at your shooting guard and have Roberson in the 3, but Roberson can guard 1 through not 1 through 5, but he can guard 1 through 4 pretty good.
Yeah, he can guard multiple positions. And now you bring in Carmelo Anthony, who's a prolific scorer. He can score at will whenever he wants. Get him the ball. He's clutch. He can do his thing. And like you pointed out earlier, on the defensive end, you got Carmelo. Now you surround him with 4 defenders. 4 very good defenders.
Well, in my opinion, Paul George is one of the best defenders in the NBA. He just doesn't get credit for it.
I appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. I'm a Paul George fan.
Yeah, I know. I watch. Basketball is more than just one side of the ball.
Yeah, and if you look at it on paper, they're the second best team coming out the West. There's a difference between paper and on the court. Like you specified yourself, you have to see how they're going to gel and come together. On paper, they're the second best team coming out the West. And not too many people are talking about this. Well, you brought it up, but you brought it up from the New York side, the New York Knicks side. The Thunder completely burned the New York Knicks. They give up Ernest Canner, Doug McDermott, and a second round pick for Carmelo Anthony for a talent like that. I mean, they have to smell the burn for somebody for something like that. For a player his caliber, his resume. Only thing missing on his resume is a championship ring. That's the only thing that's missing. But there always goes the but. Carmelo, to me, he's like he's contagious to me. It's like a cancer stick, right? I mean, he necessarily doesn't mean to, but he's just a selfish basketball player. He's very selfish. We've seen this with Denver and with the Knicks. When he was with Denver, did they or did they not bring over the great Allen Iverson to help him win when he had all the chances to?
Yep.
The Knicks and Denver, they made this crazy trade. It was a trade I haven't seen like this happen in a while. The New York Knicks basically gave up a starting 5 just for Carmelo Anthony. They gave up Danilo Gallinari, Wilson Chandler, Tyler Mozgov, and 3 draft picks for Carmelo. And also in that trade with Carmelo was Chauncey Billups. Now, when that trade went down, the whole thing came out. Carmelo he's going to retire a Knick. He's the man. New York Knicks basketball is going to be fun again. This, that, and the third. He's going to bring them a championship since I believe they haven't seen since 1973.
It goes way back.
But as we can all see how that turned out, when he went to New York, he only had 150-win season. That was his first full season he spent with the Knicks. And he spent 6 full seasons with them. Only won one time of 50 wins. Only had 151 season, pardon me.
And honestly, I think the Denver Nuggets won that trade. Like, as of today, look where the Nuggets are and look where the Knicks are. 2 completely opposite directions.
And then another thing is that I'm going to point out, he ended his Knicks career with a losing record. He won 207 games. He lost 269 games. So this is what I mean by when I tell people he's a cancer stick and he's a selfish basketball player. We all don't know what happened. There was a reason why Denver made that trade with the Knicks. And now we see another reason why New York is making this trade with the Thunder. Carmelo is a selfish basketball player. Now, granted, every team he's went to, he was the man. So he has to go to Oklahoma City Thunder with this vision of he's not the man anymore. Because now this is Russell Westbrook's team. He has to take that step back. Do we know he's going to take that step back? Can we see it? And let's not forget, you still have Paul George on that team. So now,
He
my
might even be the third option on the team.
See, now my thing is that we all know Westbrook, who's the NBA MVP, who averaged 30 points, but averaged close to 30 shots a game. And then he had 11 assists, but averaged 6 turnovers a game. So we already know Russell's going to take his close to 30 shots.
Well, I think
Do
now,
we see?
I think now with Paul George and Melo, I think his shot totals are going to go down.
Who?
Westbrook's. A little bit. I mean, I understand he's going to be the alpha. I get it. There's going to be games where he's going to take a lot of shots.
But think about it like this, though. Was he the alpha when he had Kevin Durant? No. What was he still doing? Hold on. Well, what was he still doing?
That's debatable, though. That's debatable.
He was still putting up his 30 shots a game. Even when they had, what's his name? Kevin Durant and Serge Ibaka. He was still putting up those close to 30 shots a game. What makes you think he's going to take it is going to be different now that you give him Paul George and Carmelo Anthony? Carmelo Anthony and Paul George is my favorite player, but he's not that type of tier 1 player Kevin Durant is. And neither is Carmelo Anthony. Kevin Durant's being argued as the top 2 basketball player in the world right now, or maybe a step ahead of LeBron, because he's 7 foot with a jump shot. And he was still putting up those shots. He wasn't taking no step back. That wasn't his team at that time. That was Kevin Durant's team. Westbrook was the one that was putting up close to 20 shots before Kevin Durant could even get 11 off.
And that's that's due to his personality.
You're right.
He's a
You're right.
Like,
and then,
Durant may have been a more talented player, but Westbrook was still the alpha of that team.
And then think about it like this, though. That's part of his personality, right? And that is part of Carmelo Anthony's personality as well. You're gonna have 2 selfish ball players on the same team. And we've seen this story before when he was with Denver. We've seen this story, how it all played out when he went and got him Allen Iverson, who is also another selfish ball player. You put 2 selfish ball players together, did they mesh together? They didn't make it very far. In Denver, we've seen this saga already. The only non-selfish ball player they have is Paul George. Now we still don't know how they're gonna gel on the court together. We don't know how that's gonna come. But you still have to think about those 2 things. You have to. Because men, and I'm pretty sure we can agree to this, men, we're how do you say that? Men, we're, what's that word? When you're, when you want to be big, bad, and bold, when it's crunch time?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
We have
you're
this,
trying to be, like, aggressive.
We have this thing.
Like, cocky.
Not cocky.
Not cocky.
We have this, like, this attitude where it's like we think we're bigger than what we are. Now I'm not going into consideration. I mean, I'm not giving it to basketball talent or anything like that, like what these 2 players have. But we all see. Basically, what I'm trying to ask is who's going to take that last shot when they really need it.
And that's something that what I said earlier is going to take time for them to get used to it. The same questions were said about the Warriors last year. Who's going to take that shot? You have Curry, you have Durant, you have Thompson, you have Green. Who's going to take that last shot?
Well, we all know Green would never take the last shot.
Yeah, we know Green would.
We know Green would it.
But
we also know Steph Curry isn't selfish.
It's probably, in my opinion, I think it's going to go, like, sometimes it's going to be Melo, sometimes it's going to be Westbrook. I feel like towards the beginning of the year, they're going to lean towards Westbrook only because they know, he's been with the Thunder his whole career, so they know what he's good at, what he's not good at.
Yeah, but then again, look at Carmelo's
resume.
resume. He's always been there in the clutch and has always
you can go
persevered in the clutch.
You can go 2 ways with this topic. You can either say Carmelo Anthony, based off of his pedigree, and he's new to the team, as well as Paul George, we want them to get confidence when we're put in this situation. We're in a tight game, and let's say Westbrook's having an off night, or we're going to give you the ball. We want you to make a statement why you want to be in Oklahoma City. I can see that direction of we're going to give it to Melo or Paul George. We're going to let them start out early in the season and get the ball more, so then they can make a statement on their team and get their confidence going.
I can definitely see what you're saying.
Or you can go another direction, whereas they're new to the team. we're going to lean on Westbrook towards the beginning of the year, and then as the season progresses, we're going to, depending on matchups, we'll give it to Melo. We'll give it to
You're
Paul
right.
George.
I honestly get what you're saying.
So those are the two directions I have come to conclusion with.
I definitely see where you're going with this. I can definitely see what you're doing, what you're saying. But you have two players on the same. Now this is where I go back. You have two players on the same team. I'm pretty sure they've had off nights previously before. They still put up their 30 shots a game. And even with Paul George averaged, I want to say, close to 24 shots a game. And I'm pretty sure even on an off night, he was still putting up his 24 shots. Now, this is where I keep trying to pinpoint to. The shot selection and the character and the charisma between these three players. Because they're just selfish in their own ways, can they come together? Because Carmelo, like I said earlier, Carmelo has to come into the situation knowing he's not the man anymore. Every situation he's went to, it's been he's the man. Now he has to come into a situation where he's not the man. Everything else he's done in his career has been about himself. I mean, look at it. He stayed with the Knicks for money purposes. Remember that comment you made about he made the comment. You brought it up previous podcasts ago. The reason why he's not ring chasing is because something about his gold medals or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
His gold medals are his championships.
He was content with his gold medals. His gold medals were his championships.
Whatever the case may be. Like, you can see it in little ways like that. He's a selfish person. Now he's come to the age, I don't even know how old he is, that he's desperately trying to win. And I think you're doing it at the wrong time with the wrong team. And you said that you think they're legit contenders. They may be legit contenders, but I don't see them beating past the Warriors. They might match up with them pretty well.
All right,
but
let me rephrase
I don't see them beating past the Warriors.
I see them as the biggest threat to the Warriors. I don't see the Rockets beating them. I don't see the Spurs beating them.
But remember that game one, it looked like the Spurs were going to beat the Warriors.
I know game one, but
also... But then again, you also can't go off of one game.
You can't go off of one game, but also their team, they're lacking youth. Like, yeah, they have Kawhi. They're not an explosive team. And that's the downside with the Spurs. Like, yes, they're solid. Yes, they play good defense. In fact, they're number one defense in the NBA. But when it comes down to it, when you play against younger talent, younger athletic talent, the athleticism wins most of the time. Like, and that's why I think Oklahoma City is more of a bigger threat than the Spurs. The Spurs have been there, they've been established. But besides Kawhi Leonard, they have turned into pretty much a one-person team. Kawhi Leonard does everything for their team. I mean, yeah, they have Aldridge. Yes, they have Gasol, but they're not really proving it. Like, they're not doing good with the Spurs. Aldridge looks terrible with the Spurs. Like, he started out good, but over these past couple years, he has been a no-show when they need him the most. So that's pretty much what I have to talk about with Carmelo Anthony.
All right. Now, moving on to the next topic. It sort of has a Melo situation involved with it. We believe what this person did was based off whether trying to get Carmelo on his team. Chris Paul left the Clippers organization. I would say, like Stephen A. Smith said, partially because he didn't want to play for Doc Rivers anymore. Being in LA, they didn't get very far in the 5 years he spent there. I don't even think they made it past the second round. So it was just basically a toxic situation. Turned down the 5-year, $200 million deal to go play with the Rockets, to go play with James Harden, in hopes of also getting Carmelo Anthony to form a big three. And Josh, I need you to say it for me. Who was the biggest loser throughout all of this?
The biggest loser of the Carmelo Anthony deal was Chris Paul, CP3. And here's why. Chris Paul denied the loss. I understand, like Dante said, he didn't want to play with Doc Rivers. I get it. It got old after a while. But he denied a 5-year, $201 million contract to go to the Rockets to pursue a championship. He's never been to the conference finals. He thought that he was going to get Melo later in the season because the Rockets were always talking. They've had talks ever since the season ended, pretty much, that Melo was going to come to the Rockets. It's going to be CP3, Harden, and Melo. But, plot twist, the Thunder got Carmelo Anthony. So now you're Chris Paul. You took a huge pay cut. You earned less money, way less money. You wasted millions of dollars to join a team that you're pretty much going to be in the same position. You might be a second-round team, but not a conference finals team, depending on how the Thunder mesh. I think Chris Paul takes a huge L in this trade, and in my opinion, I just think he should have stayed with the Clippers. Now that what's all unfolded, he should have stayed with the Clippers because it wasn't like he was going to win.
I don't think he should have stayed with the Clippers because, like I said, I believe that was a toxic situation. But one team I believe he should have went with were the San Antonio Spurs. They desperately need a point guard. Tony Parker's too old. He's up there in age.
He's getting old.
Okay. Patty Mills, sorry, as good as he may be, he's not a starting point guard. He might have played well while Tony Parker was out, but he's really not a starting point guard, and they desperately need a starting point guard now. Tony Parker's old. He's coming off an injury. Chris Paul is basically that point guard that fits perfectly for the San Antonio Spurs. He's one of the best passers in the game, arguably the best passer in the game. He's not selfish. He's basically an ideal player that Coach Pop should want, have, and admire in his system, on his team. So, yes, Chris Paul shot himself in the foot big time.
I completely agree. It's hard because he is the only thing that people can criticize him is his postseason success. His postseason success, my fault. The man is top 10 in assists. He's close to 20,000 points, I believe. I believe he'll get to 20,000 points in his career and over 10,000 assists. That is nothing but mind-boggling how great of a career he's had. He's led the league in assists multiple times. Mm-hmm. Been in the running for MVP every season because of what he does and his leadership.
Yep.
But what it comes down to is when you compare him to the other greats, the other legends, championships are important. Postseason success is important. And the biggest thing people will hit on him, just like how I'm hitting John Wall right now. Chris Paul was up 3-1 against the Houston Rockets in the conference semifinals. And let's not forget, they upsetted the Spurs in 7 games. I thought the Spurs were going to win the series, but the Clippers finally got over the hump. And then they took 2 steps back, blowing a 3-1 lead to the Houston Rockets in the 2015 NBA playoffs. Ever since that series has hurt Chris Paul's legacy when you compare him to the other greats. He's still an amazing point guard, unbelievable talent. But postseason success, that's where you get measured, when it matters most. And he hasn't shown up.
Absolutely agree. So, now that we wrap that up, our next topic is going to be something that
is highly
talked about, I would say.
Well, recently, over the past 2 days, it's been highly talked about. It's been all over the media. And what I don't like is sports, recently, ever since the civil rights movement and stuff like that, sports has not been as political as it is right now. It's been, over the course of Trump's campaign as well as the presidential election, sports has been highly political lately, and it's been annoying to a lot of fans as well as, and it's been really emotional to some other fans. It's very hard to talk about. That's pretty much what I'm trying to say. So Stephen Curry, what happened was Stephen Curry had a live press conference, and he said how he pretty much was hesitant with going to the White House. He said he wasn't going to go to the White House because he doesn't support Donald Trump. That's his opinion. We have one thing people have to realize is, before we get on to this topic, we do have the freedom of speech. So it does not matter how absurd it is, we do have a freedom of speech. So what Stephen Curry was saying about is he's just expressing his freedom of speech. So that's completely fine. But just again, like what we said earlier about sports being more political than it usually is. Next podcast, we're going to talk about how the NFL protests were, and it should be interesting. But anyway, now back to the topic. Dante, what do you think about Donald Trump's comments and like what Stephen Curry said?
I mean, to me, what Donald Trump is really doing to me, and I'm not a political person, but to my political view, is that Donald Trump is doing what he does to everything else. He turns everything else into a battleground and up for debate and divides everything into two. So right now what he's doing, to me, is dividing all of sports as one. I believe, to me, he's done divided all of our people today, everybody's political views. I mean, everything else is, it is divided, but this man is just come in to me and just starting to ruin everything. And I believe, like you said earlier, you pinpointed it, sports has always been political, but to me, now sports has become more, not that it's become more political, because it's always been political to me, but now that the light is shining on it, it's even more worse than what it was back in the day, because of all of our social media outlets. But now that our president of the United States is, giving his view and what he thinks, and this man has no filter on his mouth. He doesn't care what he says. He'll just blankly say it. But what he's doing now is making it more worse than what it already is, as everything else that he's doing.
Yeah, and I completely agree. Like, the reason why I'm not really talking about this topic a lot is because I want to save it all for Wednesday in football, because what I usually do is I like to connect Curry and what Curry's comments were, and as well as the football as well, because I agree with you. It's like we're divided. We're getting more divided as a country, and especially in the sports world is starting to get divided now. We have teams not going to the White House when tradition is always you go to the White House when you win a championship. You're supposed to celebrate it with the president. But now we have a guy in office that certain people do not like, which I'm showing no bias here. And those certain people are not going to go to the White House. And you have the freedom of speech. That's what a lot of people don't realize.
I totally agree with you.
That is the rule. That is the law. But the problem I have with this whole situation is why talk back? Why jabber back when it just feeds to the problem? You have a guy that says absurd comments, and then you have another. Then you retaliate back. All that's going to do is just make this divide happen. When we focus on that, but there's other stuff we should be focusing on. Puerto Rico just hit 2 big hurricanes recently. They need help. And instead on the news we're talking about Trump's tweets and stuff like that. Another problem I have is again, it's just coming to a divide. And what people should do is, instead of dividing, we should work together.
Honestly, my thing is, I'm not trying to cut you off or anything like that, Josh, but I feel like we're all missing the big point here. And I may be wrong, I may be right, I don't know. But to me, the big point is that we have a president who's too worried about, as of right now, over the weekend, he was too worried about what's going on in the sports world than worrying about what North Korea said. North Korea just stated the president of the United States, whatever he said on Twitter, was a declaration of war. As a president, be more worried about what's going on with what can come your way with this North Korea stuff and putting your people in war than just people kneeling from the flag. Now, I understand people take it as disrespect. I completely understand. People take it as utter disrespect for those who fought for us, stood for us, and everything else, gave their life for the men and the women who gave their life up for us to have our freedom of speech. do what we do what these players do for the national anthem. But our president is just taking it to like a whole nother level by saying what he says. And what some people fail to understand is that these people who did all of this did it also as well for our freedom of speech, what you said, and they can exercise the right to do that. If that was the case, then if you feel like that's disrespected and what you did was wrong and what they're doing is wrong, but remember though, you got to remember, you did it for their freedom of rights. And if you don't like it, then why are you doing it still?
And
now listen. When people,
that's fine.
Hold on. I just want to make myself clear. When people are going to hear this, they might get mad at what I'm going to say, or which I just said. But I'm going to try and clarify myself. If for our vets today that are still alive, that find this to be the most utter disrespect, okay, they have to come to the realization that what the flag stands and means for is the dignity and the rights and everything else. Why should we honor it when our own police, our own force army, even our own cops, firefighters, and etc. don't respect it? Then why should we respect it? Is what they're trying to come up as the point that they're trying to prove. If there's something that others don't respect, why should we respect it? And they swore themselves to respect it, live by it, and etc. So why should we? And my thing is that to the people who were killed, fought for our rights, and everything else like that, I feel that you may get upset. There's people that's gonna get upset, but I just see it as you did this to yourself also as well, for us to express our rights and express our freedom. If this is what we're going to do, I understand you're going to be upset, but don't lash out about how you feel. Don't lash out and try to degrade other people as well. Because, yes, you were brave enough, you did this for us. Okay? But remember though, like everything else, it has its positive and its negative. Okay? For every action, there's a reaction. And the point that I'm trying to make is, whatever the case may be, if these NFL players, basketball players, MLB players want to express their right, and even for just our regular citizens, let them do it. And if you want to have a problem with them doing what they are allowed to do, then there's something wrong. I totally understand. These people went and did it for the right, went and did this for us, and probably have more understanding to the flag than us normal citizens do. But don't get mad because we're trying to express our freedom of rights. And I'm gonna say it again: don't lash out and attack others for their freedom of right.
And I completely what you say. I completely agree with what you say. My fault, and I get that. Again, like I said earlier, freedom of speech. That's what a lot of people do not realize, that we have the right of freedom of speech. But here's the problem I have with the whole thing. You have people that died for the flag. You, instead of protesting and making the situation worse and making people backlash, because there's people that like I understand your side of you, but you also got to look at the other side as well. You have a vet, you have people here, and like when they do something, the other side backlashes. The problem is both sides are trying to protest against each other when they should be working together. We have a law system that has been in existence for over 200 years. There's some laws in the court system. That's the reason why some police officers are murdering innocent kids and getting away with it, because of the laws that are in place. There is literally a law that states that it's second degree. I don't know exactly on the top. It's second degree, where you can kill somebody under suspicion, or like not kill somebody, but you can like let's say like a cop accidentally shoots a kid because of suspicion. But what is in the rule in the law? The key word in the law is any form of suspicion. So what happens is a kid looks suspicious. He may dress suspicious. A cop can use that as suspicion, and he gets away with it. But instead of protesting against the other group of people, you got to work together. That's the problem I have. I understand protest. You get the freedom of right.
Right, I totally agree. We need to come together.
And that's the problem I have, because it's the law system. It's the laws that are in place. That's what's hurting our country right now.
Right.
And a lot of people do not realize that. People are protesting. They're like Black Lives Matter. People are like Cop Lives Matter. This, that, and the third. They're arguing. Like, notice when people get to talk about politics now, they get so emotional. You don't need to get. I know I'm going to wrap up. You don't need to get emotional about it. If you just sit and think, like, what is the true problem right now? It's our court system. The laws have been in place 200 years ago. They're created. They need to be changed. It's 200 years later. People change. Things change. We had our first African American president over these past 8 years. And again, perspective comes in another thing. I'll get more to that on Wednesday. I'm just saving a little bit. But that's the problem I have with the whole Curry-Trump thing, with the whole NFL protest thing, and protests in general. Because what happens is people protest and they get a voice, and then the other side gets angry, and then when they say something, the more society, because now we recently had a change in president, and a lot of things are changing. Imagine getting raised by the same stuff. You have your perspectives. Perspectives are different. You've been raised 40 years ago, 40, 50 years ago. Well, who has been our president for the whole generation except Obama? They've been rich, white, and successful, right? Mm-hmm. Now we get our first African-American president. A lot of changes happen. What a lot of people expect is for those people that are used to that background to change like that, to change in a snap. It takes time for that to change. That's the problem we're all facing right now. Like, we just quickly assume that old, like, what for instance, like, there's some old, I'm not saying like middle age, but you get the target group of people that, like, whenever they talk about something, it's like, why are you talking about that? And then they feel isolated. And then when they feel isolated, that's why Charlottesville came up, or whatever happened with those big riots of kill the gays and stuff like that. That happened because they weren't allowed to speak. We didn't give them the chance to speak. Whenever they spoke, I mean, it doesn't matter how crazy it is, just like you said with the other people, they have the freedom of speech. And by you ignoring them, they're just going to hold it inside of their stomach, keep it in their gut. And then they're going to be like, look, enough's enough. I'm tired of hiding it in. We're going to explode, and we're going to protest, and we're going to get angry, and we're going to riot against this, that, and the third. And that's what happened. They had a whole protest about not kill, but you know what I'm saying. Like, and we're looking at it like, wow, there's still people that are like that. And it's all because we as a nation, like, the younger generation is used to change, whereas the older one is not. They're not there yet. It takes time. We as a younger generation have to build the tolerance for that. And in order to build tolerance, it takes patience, and people need to be educated. Instead of focusing on attacking the other side, focus on changing the law system. That's all I have to say. Cool. I know I went off past time. I apologize.
Yeah.
But are you ready to wrap up?
Let's wrap this up.
Again, follow us on follow us on Instagram at swooppodcast.com, on Twitter at swooppodcast.com, _, for Instagram and Twitter, and online at swooppodcast.com. And if you guys have any questions, any concerns about each of the three topics we talked about, the Melo Trade, CP3, Curry, and as well as politics, feel free to comment below. And this is Josh and Dante signing off.
Swoop! Swoop!
Yeah, money keep running, but bet I go get it. I catch it, I got it for me, and I'm playing tag with the money. I got it, and I ain't even it. I've been trapping, getting money like this. I've been trapping in the mix. Hold up, I got it for all of my niggas. We did it for nothing, for niggas paying for all of this.